She is 66. People keep saying her best days are gone. I hear that a lot. But here is the twist I love. She stood on the Oscar stage and shouted, "I just won an Oscar." That was not long ago. That is Jamie Lee Curtis today. Still bold, still working, still surprising us. I'm Sarah, and I've spent years in archives, talking to people who were there, digging through the moments that get lost. Jamie Lee's story hits me hard because I grew up on classic films and I know how easy it is to label a woman from the 1970s as over. She is not. At 64, she won Best Supporting Actress for Everything Everywhere All at Once. And yes, she was born into Hollywood royalty, the daughter of Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh, but she made her own road. So what happened to Jamie Lee Curtis at 66, and why does it matter? We're going to follow the trail: family roots, the Halloween breakout, private battles, the Oscar, and the legacy she is shaping right now. Quick check before we dive in. What year did you first watch Halloween? The original from 1978? Tell me in the comments. You're watching Golden American Legends. Now, let's start in the present, because she is not slowing down. Here is the headline I love. She is 66 and still top billed. In a town that chases youth, Jamie Lee Curtis is back in the center of a big studio movie. The new Disney sequel is called Freakier Friday. It reunites her with Lindsay Lohan after 2 decades, and it opens on Friday, August 8th, 2025. That timing says a lot. You do not bet your summer slot on someone who is fading. You bet it on a star. Jamie returns as Tess, now older, now wiser, and yes, a grandmother. The story goes bigger and messier with body swaps across generations. On set, she even used name-labeled hats to track who was inside who. That is practical and hilarious, and it shows how much craft she brings to play. She also joked online about her little group of freaks, making it clear she is having fun with a new crowd and a new era watching her. To me, that is proof. Hollywood still counts on Jamie Lee Curtis to lead, to sell, and to deliver heart. She is shining right now. And if she is this active at 66, what huge moment came right before this run? The Oscar is next. I still replay this in my head. March of 2023, lights blazing, and Jamie Lee Curtis breathes in and says, "I just won an Oscar." After decades of work, her first nomination and her first win for Best Supporting Actress in Everything Everywhere All at Once. That is a rare late career peak. It is also a message to anyone told to sit down and be quiet after a certain age. No. Her performance as a cranky, complex IRS worker was sharp and human. It landed in a season where she also picked up major Guild and Critics honors. The symbolism was rich. Her parents, Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh, both legends, never won Oscars. She became the first in her family to hold that gold. I felt the weight of that history and the joy. Here is my question for you. Pick one: Laurie Strode from Halloween or Deirdre from Everything Everywhere. Which role is her best and why? Drop it below. For me, the win at 64 proves timing is its own art, and it makes me ask, how did her story begin before any of this? To answer that, we go back to the house she grew up in, where fame was the family language. Try to imagine this childhood. Your mom is Janet Leigh from Psycho, your dad is Tony Curtis from The Defiant Ones, and so many more. Jamie Lee Curtis has called it what it was. She was born into Hollywood royalty. That sounds glamorous, but it brings pressure. It brings eyes on you long before you know who you are. Here is the twist I love. Acting was not her plan. She has said she wanted to be a cop, the badge, the order, the service. Then a college friend nudged her to audition at a studio. One dare, one door. Suddenly, Hollywood was not just the house she visited on set as a kid, it was her possible path. Even with a famous last name, she still had to prove she could carry a story. She learned fast that legacy opens a door, but skill keeps you in the room. That mix of privilege and pressure shaped her voice. It gave her a kind of steel under the smile, and it set up a question that would define her early years. If she tried acting, what would that first big role be? The answer arrived with a knife score and a babysitter named Laurie. Hear that chilling piano theme in your head? In 1978, at 19 years old, Jamie Lee Curtis stepped into Laurie Strode for Halloween. It was her first movie role. John Carpenter cast a newcomer, and she turned a small-budget slasher into a legend. The film exploded, rewrote the rules for independent horror, and gave Jamie Lee a label that stuck for years: Scream Queen. But listen to what her work actually did. She made Laurie brave, smart, and human. You can feel the fear, yes, but you also feel the will to live. That is why the movie endures. It is more than jump scares. It is character. Fans still argue if Halloween is a cult classic or a straight-up classic. I say it is both. It changed the game and got copied 1,000 times. Of course, that kind of breakout can trap you. You become the thing everyone asks you to repeat. Jamie Lee wore the crown with pride, and then she did something harder. She pivoted. She took chances, chased laughs, and showed range. Horror made her famous, but it did not define the ceiling. What came next? A run that proved she could do almost anything. Here is where Jamie Lee Curtis surprised people. After Halloween, she did not stay in one lane. She moved into sharp, funny, grown-up comedy. Trading Places in 1983 showed off her timing and wit. A Fish Called Wanda in 1988 made her a master of screwball style. True Lies in 1994 let her flip from domestic to daring, and she took home a Golden Globe for it. Years later, she was part of Knives Out, proving again she can nail dry humor in an ensemble. On television, she kept stretching, from dark comedy to thrillers, and she picked up nominations along the way. She also became a best-selling children's author. Her I Feel books help kids name feelings and find kindness in simple language. That matters to me. It means she took her voice beyond film and into homes and classrooms. By now, the typecast label was broken. She could be fierce, goofy, maternal, or strange. She kept showing that longevity is not a trick. It is the result of taste and work. But even as the hits stacked up, there was a private cost she hid from nearly everyone. The smiles were real, so were the struggles. Let's talk about those. Fame can be bright enough to hide the darkest rooms. For years, Jamie Lee Curtis hid one. She has said she was an opiate addict. She liked the buzz, and she believes that if the current wave of fentanyl had been around then, she would be dead. That is raw. That is honest. It is also the kind of truth that saves lives when someone brave says it out loud. She got sober in the late 1990s. In February of 2022, she marked 24 years of sobriety. Think about the quiet work behind that number, the meetings, the shaky days, the choice to stay. During those years, she also suffered deep losses. Her mother, Janet Lee, died in 2004. Her father, Tony Curtis, died in 2010. Grief and recovery often live side by side. She kept going anyway. Stories like this are why I make this show. Real people carry pain, even when the world only sees the red carpet. If you are finding value here, take a second right now to subscribe, like, and share. It helps more than you know. And now, the question that matters most: how did she turn that pain into strength? The answer is her recovery story. Jamie Lee Curtis calls sobriety her greatest win. She has said, "My sobriety has been the key to freedom, the freedom to be me." She adds, "I look in the mirror, I see myself, I accept myself." I love that because it is simple and clear. No performance, no image, just truth. After years of hiding, she chose light, and the work she made after that felt different, bolder, cleaner, more alive. Recovery did not erase her past. It reframed it. The grit that got her through the early auditions became the grit that kept her steady in the hard days. With clarity came better choices. She showed up to sets present and curious. She trusted her odd, funny edges, which made roles like her scene-stealing turn in Everything Everywhere All at Once sing. The Oscar season that followed did not define her. It confirmed her. When she talks about sobriety, she sounds like someone handing out a map. Not perfect, just honest. And honestly, that honesty is magnetic. It draws people in and invites them to keep going too. So, with strength reclaimed, what did she do with her voice beyond acting? She used it, loudly. Let's go there next. Some stars stay quiet. Jamie Lee Curtis did the opposite. She stepped forward. She became a loud, loving ally for LGBTQ+ people, speaking up for equality and respect. She once said, "Championing a cause is an inherited trait. I was raised around that." You feel the through line from her family's public lives to her own desire to stand up for others. In recent years, she was even honored as an Ally of the Year by the press, a sign that her support is seen and felt. At the same time, she kept creating beyond the screen. Her children's books reached families everywhere. Titles in her I Feel line help kids talk about moods, fear, joy, and change in words they can hold. As someone who grew up loving old movies and new stories, I see that as legacy work. That is culture building, one bedtime read at a time. This is the part of Jamie Lee's life that connects the artist and the citizen. She acts, she writes, she advocates. It all flows from the same core: care and candor. With so much out there, you might wonder, how does the industry honor that range? Good question. Let's look at the hardware and the headlines. Recognition did not come fast. It came steady, and then it came big. Jamie Lee Curtis is now an Academy Award winner for Best Supporting Actress. In that same season, she also picked up major Guild and Critics Prizes, which shows the respect of her peers. Earlier in her career, she earned Golden Globes, including one for True Lies, and she has long been a familiar name on nominee lists across film and television. She also has a storied history with honors from fans and festivals, the people who keep watching. Awards are not the whole story, but they are a mirror. They reflect how a body of work lands across time. And in her case, the mirror got brighter with age, not dimmer. That is rare. It is worth saying out loud. When an actor can carry a horror classic, a broad comedy, a tender drama, and a wild multiverse ride, the shelf tends to fill up. Those trophies lock in a simple truth. She earned her spot at the table with craft and grit. Now that the honors are in place, what does it all add up to? Legacy. Let's take a breath and consider what her journey means, not just to Hollywood, but to anyone who keeps showing up. Jamie Lee Curtis is proof that time can be your ally. Her career stretches from 1978 to today. That is nearly 5 decades. Along the way, the labels changed: Scream Queen, Comedian, Leading Woman, Ensemble Anchor, Advocate, Author. Then came the word that adds a crown: Oscar winner. She became the first in her family to hold that statue, which is a beautiful echo to a childhood spent on sound stages. I see her as a guide for late bloomers and second acts. She reminds us that the door does not close just because someone else says it should. In interview after interview, she pushes the same message to young artists: keep going. You do not know when your turn arrives. Her turn arrived at 64, and she was ready because she kept working, kept learning, kept trusting herself. Legacy is not only about credits, it is about the way a life story changes the weather for others. Her story changes it. It says age is not a cage, it is experience. With that in mind, I want to look at the quiet anchor that held her steady through all of it, the home life that does not chase headlines but matters most. Behind the posters and premieres is a steady home. Jamie Lee Curtis married writer, director, and actor Christopher Guest in 1984. They have been together for over 4 decades, which is almost unheard of in this business. They have 2 children, Annie and Ruby, and they keep family life private and grounded. That choice is part of her strength. It gave her a place to land when work was loud and when life was hard. I love the way she talks about home: simple routines, quiet nights, a normal house in Los Angeles that feels more small town than spotlight. Guest has his own creative world, from music satire to mockumentaries. They support each other's work without turning the living room into a press tour. That balance tells you a lot about how she lasted. Fame was the job, family was the base. When I think about her at 66, I pictured that base. It is where grief was held when her parents passed. It is where she marked sobriety milestones. It is where she learned to accept herself and keep moving. With the personal foundation strong and the professional story roaring, what do we take with us from her journey? Let's wrap with the lessons. Here is the lesson I carry from Jamie Lee Curtis. It is never too late to become who you are. She was a teen horror heroine, a comedy pro, and then, decades later, an Oscar winner. She faced addiction, chose recovery, and called sobriety her key to freedom. She became a voice for people who need care. She kept working, kept learning, and kept her heart open. At 66, she is not done. A new studio comedy waits this summer. More stories are coming, more advocacy, more pages for kids to read. The point is not the next credit, though. The point is the pattern. Persistence, authenticity, service. That is a map for any age, any field. If you lean into your truth, your moment can still meet you. So here is the takeaway. Do not count yourself out. Do not let anyone else do it either. Let her story remind you to show up, even when the world moves on to the next shiny thing. Because sometimes the best chapter is the one you write later. Now let's close this out and set you up for the next legend we will explore. Jamie Lee Curtis at 66 is not a rumor. It is a record of grit, grace, and a late bloom that turned into full flower. We trace the arc from a quiet kid born to movie stars to a 1978 Halloween breakout, through private battles to that gold statue she lifted in 2023. Reality beat the myth. She did not fade. She found new power and used it. If this story moved you, I would love your support. Please subscribe, like, and share so more people can find these deep dives. On Golden American Legends, I bring the past to life so it can meet us right now. Thank you for watching, truly. Which lesson from Jamie's life hit you hardest today? Her perseverance in the craft, her comeback through recovery, or something else? Tell me in the comments and keep the thread going. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.